Stretching pizza dough should be the easy part. You mix the ingredients, kneaded it up, waited for days, and then you get to the bench and it all falls apart. If that's something you're struggling with, we've all been there. But the way that dough fights you is a pretty good clue as to what's going wrong. Most stretching advice jumps straight to all the fancy hand moves. But sometimes those problems that you're having on the bench really started days before your hands even got involved. So today, I'm gonna walk my pizza dough through from mix to stretch and try to help you diagnose what's going wrong with yours. Before your dough's ever even close to being ready to stretch, you have to build enough gluten strength for it to withstand that tension. This whole process of strengthening your gluten starts as you're mixing your pizza dough, whether it's in a mixer or by hand. As that flour is hydrating and that gluten is starting to develop, you're building the base for that strength to build over the next couple of days as you ferment and let that dough develop. That baseline of gluten strength is what's gonna give you a strong enough dough to hold air and have a great, flavorful, airy bite in the final pizza. But the mixer isn't the only place where gluten development happens. Rests, stretch and folds, and all that jazz help further strengthen and develop your gluten network so that when you go to stretch, everything holds up. So you don't need to pass the window pane test straight out of the mixer every time you make pizza dough. You just want enough of a foundation so that as you let that dough rest, it continues to develop and strengthen. And if the entire process doesn't develop enough strength, when you go to stretch, no amount of fancy tossing or slapping or any of that stuff is gonna make up for it. So keep that in mind as you're mixing your pizza doughs. The dough that comes out of the bowl is different than the dough that you're gonna be stretching. So I just pulled this pizza dough out of my fridge. It's been balled up and sitting in there overnight, having a nice cold proof. And if I went to stretch it right now, I would be so frustrated, right? Cold dough is not gonna work with you. When you pull that dough out of the fridge, the gluten's really tight and it's all tensed up. So you have to let it rest and relax. That's when your pizza dough is gonna be ready to stretch. So if you wanna check if your pizza dough is ready to stretch or not, you can do what we call the poke test. Take a finger, poke your dough, and see how fast that indentation springs back. If it comes back super quick, that indicates that your dough's not ready to stretch. If you poke your dough ball and that indentation springs back nice and slow, but there's still a little bit of it visible, that means your dough has relaxed enough where the gluten is gonna be responsive to some stretching. And if you press your dough, then that indentation just stays, it just sits there and nothing happens at all. That's an indication you're kind of getting to that overproof stage. So now this dough has been sitting out for so long that it's so weak, it's gonna stretch super easy, probably tearing your hand. So we've checked our dough, it's spraying back super quick, it's cold, it's just out of the fridge, it's not ready to go. I'm gonna cover it up and let it rest someplace warm. For me, in this time of year, it usually takes about 2 hours or so for that dough to be ready to stretch, but that's gonna vary depending on where you live and how warm of a spot you're keeping the dough in. It's been 2 hours, we're gonna do the poke test and see if we're ready to go. Yeah, buddy. Beautiful. So that's exactly what we wanna see. Floured finger so the dough doesn't stick to it, gentle poke, and that dough comes back about halfway. That means we're ready to rock and roll. The most important thing through all this is that flour is gonna be your friend. I use a semolina flour to stretch. If you don't have that, AP bread flour, whatever you have on hand works fine. The semolina's flour is nice because it's a little coarser, so it almost acts as like tiny ball bearings when you go to stretch. But you don't wanna be too scared. You wanna be nice and liberal with it. In the proofing box, get all sides of that dough ready to go. I will make a nice pile where I plan to start my stretch, dump my dough ball right in there. Let's see, we'll start with the biggest dough ball here. You don't wanna do anything to knock that air out too soon. So you wanna be gentle with it. Look at that, gorgeous. Move into my center here. Now there's tons of ways to stretch pizza dough and people have a ton of opinions on how you should do it. So this is how I do it. A couple of general rules of thumb. Try not to use the tips of your fingers. You don't want to poke through the dough. Think about the pads of your fingers. We're gonna lift it off the table. Think about having it over the knuckle, not poking your fingers through, but you'll see all that as we go through and stretch. So I usually start by making it into a circle, and then I press out that air towards the crust. You'll see some people do this little finger poke. I'll flip. And what you wanna do is you wanna get all that gas that's trapped in the middle of the pizza into the cornicione, into the crust. So from here, you can see it's already much bigger than when we started, and this was about a 400-gram dough ball, which for me should make a 16-inch pizza or so. And once you've pressed it out, you know you can only press so much out, so then I'll go into the DJ method, and you'll see as I turn, I form this little cup with my hand, and that kind of reinforces the crust, keeping this part in the center from getting too flat. Now I'm gonna get it on my knuckles, and you can see as we do this, it's stretching, flour's falling off, and that's great. We're just trying to keep this nice and even. See how it's on my knuckles and I'm not poking through with my fingers. If you want, you can smoosh your flour aside. And if you lift it up to the light, you should be able to see thin in the middle, thicker in the crust, and that's kind of what you're trying to preserve here. So this should not take 8 minutes of you fighting it to stretch out. If it's properly proofed, it's well fermented, all that stuff, this should go pretty simple, pretty fast. Any big bubbles in the crust, I like to just pop, or else those will mega inflate in the oven. And then before I go to top, I put a light layer of flour underneath just so it doesn't stick to our table. Now, if you're struggling to get your dough out to the diameter that you think it should be, you can put some toppings on it, and then it should stretch a little bit more. So the weight of those toppings is actually gonna help it be weighed down in the center, and you can get a couple more inches out of it than you would if you were just trying to struggle with that dough alone. So I have some toppings on it. You can usually get it to come out a little bit. Yeah, look at that. Once that weight is down there in the center of the pie. Now, if you're working with a super overproofed dough, or you didn't think you developed enough gluten when you were mixing, you wanna go super light on the toppings. Less is always more. The weight of those toppings will rip through, just like the points of your fingers will. But I'm pretty confident in this dough. I don't think I'm gonna get any tears here. So I'm gonna put an ungodly amount of pepperoni, or a godly amount, depending on, you know, your personal lifestyle choices here. Greasy hands, fine, but keep a towel close by. Wetness, grease is gonna cause everything to stick, and that's gonna ruin all that hard work you just put in. I'm gonna load this sucker up onto the peel. Like I said, give that one final stretch on here. Readjust all this good stuff as needed. And boom. That feels so big it doesn't fit hanging on any of the tables. Come on. That's what I'm talking about. Stretched beautifully. I know it's probably a little pale for some people on the bottom, but not every pizza has to be burnt to shit. It's crunchy, it's baked, it holds a fold, and it tastes great. A great pizza to demonstrate what proper stretching technique helps you do. And trust me, not every pizza I stretch looks like this, and that's okay. They still taste good. It's a learning curve. Not every time you go to make pizza for your friends or your family, it doesn't have to look perfect, right? That's all internet bullshit. It does make you feel good when you do it though. So hopefully this video helped you diagnose where you might be having some issues, whether it's in the mixing phase, not fermenting long enough, letting your dough go too far, being too rough on your dough. There's way more than one easy fix to address issue stretching pizza dough. So if you have any questions or I didn't cover something that you think really matters, let me know down below in the comments. And until then, keep practicing, keep making pizza, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.